Hire purchase is a debt arrangement that most people get into at some point in their lives. Basically, it is called hire purchase because first you hire something, and then when you are done paying it off, you have then purchased it. Okay. So you first hire, then you purchase, so it's called hire purchase. Often people talk about it as HP. It is always going to be using the simple interest formula. But before we go and do some examples today, I'd like you to write down a few extra notes about what to expect with hire purchase. Okay, so I'm going to work with some really basic numbers that you can intuitively understand in your head. And then you're going to think through all the different possibilities, and then we'll do examples which don't all have all the possibilities in them. Okay, so a really good example is with a car. Another way in which people use hire purchase is for buying furniture. So it might interest you to know that furniture companies make more money out of the debt that they sell than out of the actual furniture. Okay, so what you're going to have with hire purchase is you're going to have something, let's say it's something that's worth 100,000 Rand. Okay, and that's going to be the cost price. Okay, so these are the options that can come up. Then what we can have is we can have a deposit. Okay, there might be a deposit. You might be given an amount that is a deposit, and you might be given a percentage. Okay, if you have a deposit, and you don't always have a deposit, in fact, you might have even seen car adverts that advertise no deposit necessary, right? Okay, but if there is one, it must be subtracted from the cost price, or let's say price tag, that might be more helpful, before calculating the interest. Okay, so that is the biggest issue I have with this topic, or the biggest issue I have seen my students have with this topic, is that they don't realize that they really need to take off the deposit. Let's say it's going to be a 20% deposit. Okay, then what you need to do is you would need to take the 100,000 Rand and you would need to subtract the deposit. Okay, you can probably do this in your head. Hey, what is 20% of 100,000 Rand? Do that in your head and know that it's going to be 20,000. Okay, so in order to know what I'm then calculating the interest on, so what is getting put into the simple interest calculation, it is my 100,000 Rand price tag or cost price minus my 20,000 Rand deposit, which means, you can also do this in your head, my 80,000 Rand goes into my simple interest calculation. Okay. There's a few more other things that you might need to do with hire purchase. You might need to calculate monthly repayments. So let's look at the numbers that we have already used and put those into a simple interest calculation. I'd want to know what my total amount is that I now owe. I know that what I'm paying interest on would be the 80,000, okay? And it would be whatever my interest rate is. I'm going to just make up numbers now. Let's make it 10% to make it easier. It's going to be 10%, and let's do for 6 years, because that's quite a common term, is 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years. It's a short-term loan, okay? It's not like a home loan which can go for 20 or 30 years. Okay, once we put that into the calculator, what we're going to know is we're going to know how much you owe right at the end of the 6-year period, which is 128,000 Rand. Okay, so what that is made up of is not the deposit, because that had to be subtracted, because a deposit is an amount you don't pay any interest on, and that's why we pay deposits, is because we don't want to have to take out the entire amount as a loan, because then we've got to pay interest on the entire amount. This is the amount after the deposit has been subtracted and the interest has been added. Okay, that's then actually what you owe. So that's getting your total amount. And then what I said you might have to do is you might have to work out monthly repayments. So a monthly repayment, mostly we work with monthly. It can obviously be other terms, but monthly repayment would be that in total divided by the number of months in 6 years, right? So it would be 128,000 divided by how many months? Would it be 6 times 12, which is 72, right? So we would be taking that and we would divide by 72 and we would get that you're paying 1777.78 per month. Okay. The other thing we can do, which I'm not going to add now because it's quite obvious when we get there, is you might have to add on insurance. Often they put, in furniture companies, they put life insurance that you have to pay as well, like a tiny little amount, like 29 Rand a month or something. Or some kind of service charge or an extra payment, which would then be added to your monthly amount. Okay, let's have a look at the description and at the examples that are coming. So a hire purchase agreement is a short-term loan. Household appliances, furniture are bought on HP. We sign an agreement, often called finance, to pay a specific amount per month, and then it is simple interest. Okay. Right, a deposit is often paid. The buyer will be required to pay the total interest charge on the loan, even if the loan can be paid off in a shorter time. So there isn't a quick way around. If it's a 6-year loan, you have to pay off 6 years worth of interest. All right, so Agnes buys a tumble dryer for 4,000 Rand. She's going to take out a hire purchase loan, so we know that it's going to be simple interest, involving equal monthly payments over 3 years. The rate is 14% per annum simple interest, and then she also takes out an insurance premium per month to cover the cost of damage or theft. Okay, so what's missing here? We don't have a deposit. So I actually want to write that down. Okay, there's no deposit. So there's nothing I need to take off or calculate in the beginning. And I think it's really worthwhile having subheadings when you do hire purchase, where you actually write things down like deposit, calculate it and take it off. Or what I've just done is to say no deposit and then be very aware that that is a step you do not have to undertake. Okay, so she's going to pay interest on the whole amount of 4,000. Okay, so my A value is what I don't know. My P value, so the P value is now the amount being borrowed, okay, not being invested. That is the whole 4,000 Rand, 3 years, and my interest rate is 14%. My N is 3, and then at the end of it, we're going to have to work out what's happening with this insurance. But what they want here is the actual amount paid for the tumble dryer. Okay, so let's put that into the simple interest calculation. My A equals P, and you'll notice now I'm not going to write out the formula again because we probably know it off by heart by now. I'm actually just going to put in the substitution. And you will get the same marks if you do it this way, because if you substitute correctly, it also means you know the formula, so you can still get a formula mark. 1 plus my I, which is my 14%, times 3. Okay, and once again, the marks will be for substituting and then for the answer. Okay, and that is 5,680. And that is the total amount paid for just the tumble dryer. This is not asking us to include the insurance. So I'm putting that there. It's excluding the insurance. Okay, so that is the total amount paid for the tumble dryer. If we've been asked the amount of interest, remember we could just take this and subtract the 4,000. Okay, now we need to work out monthly loan repayments. So what we've got to get our heads around is that 5,680 Rand must now be split up over the number of months in, how long was it again? 3 years. Okay, so I've got to take 5,680 and I'm going to divide that by, you might know that it's 36, or you might actually need to write there 3 times 12. Okay, and that is going to be 157 Rand 78. Okay, but remember that to do the monthly repayment, she's also going to add on the 12 Rand 40. Okay, so that is the payment on the loan, and then I need to take that amount and I need to add on the insurance, which is a very small amount. Okay, so my total monthly payment is going to be 170 Rand 18. In the next example, Ruhan buys a computer costing 12,000 Rand. Now we have a deposit. So I'm going to put my little subheading here. I'm going to say deposit. Okay, he pays 20% deposit. So I've actually got to go and calculate that. And then takes out a 24-month, oh, what is that? That is 2 years. Hire purchase loan on the balance. The word balance means left over after the deposit, in this case it's the deposit, has been subtracted. But balance always just means what's left over after stuff has been added or subtracted. Okay. The interest rate charged on the loan is 12% per annum simple interest, and now we've got to calculate some things. Okay, what are his monthly repayments? Well, that's a very complicated question because I've got to do all of those steps that I showed you right at the beginning of the video in order to calculate monthly repayments. So let's start with taking this deposit off, which means we've got to calculate it first. Right, I'm going to say 20% of my 12,000. Okay. And that is 2,400 Rand. That must now be removed. It's got to be taken off the 12,000. Okay, so I've now got to take my 12,000 and I need to subtract the 2,400, and that will get me to 9,600 Rand. And I'm just going to put there, that is the loan. That is the P amount. So that is what goes into the simple interest calculation. A equals P. P is the 9,600. Please, it's not the 12,000 and it's also not the 2,400. The 2,400 Rand is the only amount of money in this whole question that does not get interest added onto it. Okay, so I'm going to put in the rest of my numbers. 1 plus, it is, careful now, 20% deposit, but 12% interest. Don't confuse those. It's another thing I've seen happen a lot. So it's going to be 12% times, we were told 24 months, but remember my calculation works with years, so I better convert that into years, which I did there in the question as well. Okay, so plug and play into calculator, and I'm going to get 11,904 Rand total. Okay, so that is the total amount that I need to repay, but they want the monthly repayments. So the next step is to take my 11,904 and divide it by the thing they already gave me, which was the 24 months. So they kind of did that calculation for me. Okay, and that's going to be 496 Rand per month. So what makes this quite a complex question? The steps are actually easy, but you have to then remember all the steps off by heart, because all we get asked for is like the monthly repayments. We don't get told all the steps in the question, and a question like this can be worth 5 or 6 or 7 marks. Part B of the question is asking what he will actually pay for the computer. So what I want you to now think about is what has he gone and paid? Okay, because he didn't pay 12,000 Rand, he paid a deposit and then he paid also a bunch of interest. So what are the two amounts of money that he paid out? Well, he first paid out the 2,400 Rand deposit, and then he didn't pay any interest on that, but he still paid the money, right? And then of course he paid this 11,904. There's no insurance or anything here, so it's just that amount. So I'm going to now add on the amount after the interest has been paid, and what we get is a grand total of 14,304. Okay, what's significant there is that is a lot more than the 12,000. So once again, if I wanted to know how much interest he'd paid, I would say this 14,304 minus the original price tag of the computer. So you can see that there's an actual amount of interest that then has gone and been paid. My last example of hire purchase is involving a mobile phone. Okay, costs 8,000 Rand on hire purchase, pays a deposit of 10%, so we need to have a little subheading there, and then pays 36 monthly payments of that. So this is what I would call a backwards question, and you'll see why. Because we're getting the information we normally have to calculate. So it's like we've got to go backwards. Okay, so I get the deposit, fine, we'll work that out. But they want to know, what is the simple interest rate? Hey, we did calculations like that when we did simple interest. So it's clearly going to be solving for I and then converting it to a percentage. All right, so let's get this deposit out of the way. 10% or 10 over 100 times my 8,000. That is 800 Rand deposit. Okay, so he definitely paid that. 36 times 344 is 12,384. So that's the amount of money that was actually the loan after it got paid off. This is the A value in our simple interest calculation. Okay, so the two amounts that he paid was the 12,384, also the 800, but what we're being asked for is, what did he have as his interest rate? Okay, so what was his P amount? Can we know what that is? Well, 8,000 Rand was the cost price, but remember we've always got to subtract the deposit. So actually the P amount is the 7,200. So look what I'm going to do now. I'm going to pop it into the simple interest calculation. I'm going to say A value was the 12,384. My P value is the 7,200, and I'm solving for I. Okay, 36 monthly payments. That's going to be I times, how many years is 36 months? 3. Okay, so now I'm going to take my 12,384, have that on my calculator. I'm going to divide by 7,200, and I get 43 over 25. And that equals 1 plus 3I. I'm now going to minus 1 on my calculator on the left-hand side, and I get 18 over 25. Obviously, minusing 1 gets rid of that, and that equals 3I. I'm then going to take what's on my calculator screen, which is the 18 over 25, and I'm going to divide that by 3 and convert to decimal. What I get then is that I equals 0,24. Then I times it by 100, I get my interest rate, which is 24%. And that's the question fully answered. But you can see with these questions, hire purchase is quite satisfying because it is very realistic stuff that we're doing. But there's always these extra steps that do not get bullet pointed in questions necessarily. They might be, but the examples that I've done with you today are ones where we really had to invent all the steps on our own.